Welcome to the TrumpTater podcast. I'm here today with Greg Hughes, running for governor for the great state of Utah.
Yes.
Thank you for coming on.
Great to be here. This is a big deal for me. You know, I've heard a lot about this, and I'm looking, and I'm wondering, the TrumpTater. This is like I said, you're legendary now. The whole state, everybody's watching it, and here I am. Look, I don't even know if I'm social distancing enough with the TrumpTater. I don't know if it's still required. But I feel pretty comfortable.
I think you should. TrumpTater's immune.
Yeah, very healthy, very healthy. Yeah. Huge.
So, Greg, as you know, I have a baked potato store.
Yes.
Just about a block and a half from here. I hope you're going to come have an
sure
awesome baked potato after. But people were calling Trump a TrumpTater like a dictator after he was elected. And having been a lover of potatoes and a lover of Trump, this is what you come up with, is the TrumpTater. And
I love it. Like I said, it's been like wildfire. People have been really excited, and we've seen them. We had a business rally in Utah County two weeks ago, and everybody loved the TrumpTater. Well received. Everywhere I've seen the TrumpTater, people are excited and want their picture.
He's in the Weber State mascot game too, the halftime show, and all the kids loved him. Yeah, so anyway, we've had a lot of fun, but I just want our audience, if you haven't seen a TrumpTater podcast before, to know what a TrumpTater is. So the word Trump means to outclass, outshine, outperform, defeat someone or something. It also means a dependable and exemplary person. So is there any better description of our president than that?
There is not. No, that's an apt description, Jamie.
So a TrumpTater is someone who has those attributes.
Nice.
And it's certainly not a dictator. So anyway, a lot of people are not sure if it's a pro-Trump or anti-Trump thing. So it's 100% pro-Trump, and that we all need to be TrumpTaters, people that are out there outclassing, outshining, and not, we're positive people. And that's one thing I love about President Trump. He is an optimist. And he's not one of these people that believe that, what's the word I'm looking for? That because scarcity mentality, he's not one of scarcity mentality
that's right.
That you can't succeed because I'm going to succeed. He believes everybody can be successful, and that's...
There is an optimism, and that's why Make America Great Again was a great, we all think about it, we all talk about that, and now it's Keep America Great, and I just think there's been an optimism when he was a candidate in 2016, that's why I support him, but going forward, I just think he's always pushing for that. He knows there's American exceptionalism, that we're the land of the free, home of the brave. There's greatest country in the world. He knows it, and he just wants Americans to be able to, do what their potential and their desire allows them to do. And that's great in a president. That's not always the case.
It is, and and I think he takes a step further. I don't feel like he just wants to make America great again, because he knows if America's great, the rest of the world will rise as well.
That's true. That's an important part, because I remember during the Obama administration, there was this worry that where there was this apology tour saying that America had been too harsh or whatever happened during the, there was this observation that if America is not seen as the leader, if it is not seen as being strong, it makes the world a more dangerous place. Yeah. So that the opposite of that is what the president has done, is American exceptionalism, is America has done well with this pandemic, aside. We've had this interrupt that great economic engine, but where the United States is going, that makes it the world a safer place, for sure.
It does. So the TrumpTater has a few questions for you today. So one of the things that's coming out of this pandemic is there's a big push for vote by mail, and some other voting issues that we really need to address on a national basis, because even though voting is a statewide issue or state issues, and perhaps I guess just even encourage other states to do it, but so TrumpTater would like to know what your thought is on a national voter ID or state ID using. What are some ways we can?
So I think the premise here is, how do we make sure there's integrity in our election cycle? And how do we make sure that people that are voting are registered to vote, that they're citizens, that they have the right to vote? It's an honor and a privilege to be in this country and to be able to vote. I've never been a big fan of lowering the standards for voting. I think it's condescending to say that people aren't able to have an ID or a state-issued ID. I think that you absolutely can, and I think you should, because we want integrity in our elections process. You can't get it if the people that are casting that vote, you don't know who they are, and anybody that tells you, Well, some people are just not competent enough to have ID. Well, then they're not using banks or they're not going to stores. We use ID throughout our lives in terms of the things that we do, commerce and whatnot. We can certainly do it when we vote.
Absolutely. And if you don't have an ID, we do all have fingerprints.
True.
And so if you're going to vote by mail, in order to prevent voter fraud, that you can at least maybe stick a little ink pad in there to get a thumbprint and put on there.
Yep.
And that would stop the potential for
Voter fraud?
Yeah, voter fraud, but vote often, vote.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Vote now, vote often type of mentality that when people do abuse our voter privileges, then.
And you know, we've seen cases of this. It's popped up. I mean, you've seen complaints about voter fraud and people going to large residential areas or senior centers or things, and all these votes coming out as a block, and then finding out that maybe they weren't valid. And so there's been complaints. There's been elections that even recently, 2 years ago, was overturned because of complaints on a congressional race back east.
Well, ballot harvesting took place in California too, and we lost a few seats in California because of that. And the other day, somebody said that they got like a stack of vote by mail applications in California. Several hundred to one location. So anyway.
My basic premise is this: I have loved to vote in person. I love to get to see the election officers that are there. They're usually your neighbors, people from your, where you live. You can thank them for being there. You present your ID. You sign in that you're voting. You get your sticker after you vote that says "I voted today." It's civic participation. You're going to a school or a fire station or a city hall, and you get to see people, and I love that. I love that civic participation coming on election day. I just don't think that convenience should be the guiding light in our open and free elections. I think convenience is certainly something you want. Absentee ballots would be great, but I love election day, and I think we rob ourselves of that feeling and that sense of civic duty when we don't have a day that everybody comes together. We should make it a holiday.
I would be 100% behind that. One of the things, I know I can't register my son or my daughter when they were young for soccer without some type of identification. So if you can't register your child to play community act sports, you shouldn't be able to vote without some type of identification.
It's just integral to society at this point, what we do in terms of, we'll put it this way, identity theft, it's prevalent, especially in this technology age. And so where there's identity theft and it happens so often, making sure you are who you say you are, we're asked to do it a lot. And I think that in voting it should be the same.
So a couple of weeks ago, the TrumpTater saw you out at a Get Back to Work rally. So I'd like to discuss the importance of safety versus civil liberties.
So TrumpTater will love this answer because this is a TrumpTater. This goes to the core of being an American. We have a Bill of Rights. We have constitutionally protected liberties. Our right of assembly, freedom of religion. How many people know that the state of Utah is actually prohibiting churches from opening their doors? And only just this last week they said, well, you can open them, but here you're non-negotiable. This is coming from the retired General Burton, who's now the acting state health department director. General Burton says, you can open your doors, but here are your non-negotiable stipulations. You will keep family units 6 feet apart. I don't have any problem. I'm not debating the process of how we stay healthy. I'm saying that in a church, in a place of worship, those that are faith leaders, they decide how to keep people safe because they have a common interest in people being safe. It's not government's role to dictate the terms in which people in this country can worship. And we're there. And it's happened. People are afraid because of this virus. And because of that fear, we're letting some of these critical liberties, these civil liberties we have, constitutionally protected liberties, be threatened. And even our ability to work and anyway, I've been worried about it. And I've seen some things, our right of assembly, our freedom of religion, our right to having government define what's an essential business and what's a non-essential business. If it's supporting a family, it's pretty essential, especially that family. So I think those are things we've gotten way off the rails on this state of emergency in ways that I'm not comfortable with at all.
Well, I've been puzzled because I'm a restaurant owner and we're essential to a degree because we provide food.
Yes.
But I'm puzzled on how the coronavirus knows where the virus can spread and where it can't. Because when I go into Smith's, there's hundreds of people there. Same
That's
with
right.
Costco or Home Depot or Lowe's. And I know businesses like Lifetime and Teleperformance, there's many businesses that have been open throughout this, and I don't want to in any way jeopardize those businesses because I think they have the right to be open, but have hundreds of employees working simultaneous shifts. I mean, one after another, 24/7. How does the coronavirus
The virus
know?
doesn't know, and this is the reality. $5.5 billion economic sector in Utah. The third largest economic sector in our state are our restaurants. It employs over 117,000 Utahns. To just summarily end this industry and to see it shut down the way it's been, even as it's been so-called opened, these restrictions of how many tables you could have inside, it doesn't work financially. You can't bring in your cooks, and you can't bring in what you need to actually provide for people that are in sit-down dining if you can't have enough people there. So it's, even as they've said, we're opening slowly. I don't think the governor or the COVID-19 task force of our state, they get to pick shades and colors, red and orange and yellow and green, whether you open. It is a false choice to say that we in America and in the state of Utah even have the ability to not work. Bills come due every 30 days. If your household income is interrupted, that is not a healthy situation. Poverty will not lead to healthy results. Public safety results will be undermined when you can't work, when businesses have been forced to shut. The reality is, some businesses that have been forced to shut by the government that were doing well will never open again. There are people whose jobs they were turned away and sent home that won't be able, those jobs aren't waiting for them when we come out of this. We have to get back to work right now, and that's not a choice. The government just can't print money to replace economic activity. So it's tough times. We have to take smart precautions, but it's not true that we can stay inside and simply not have an economy in this country or in our state.
But even if we could, if we could print money, and some people in the national level are suggesting we can.
Yeah.
This is at least a year out, maybe two.
Yeah.
So, to tell people they have to stay confined, stay in situations where they can't express any type of physical affection, things of that nature, it's very unhealthy. So there's a lot of things on the other side, even if we had all the money,
Sure.
that depression, suicide, domestic violence, all those things should be taken into account, because you have to have a purpose, which I'm about to ask you your purpose on running for governor, because everybody has to have passion. My kids tease me because my TrumpTater's my passion right now.
Good passion.
I love the TrumpTater, and he keeps me going, especially through this coronavirus. But what is your passion on running for governor of Utah?
So it's this. I was born. My mother was a single mom. My grandmother was a single mom, and when I came back to when I was born and I brought home, I had a grandmother and a mother and an aunt that raised me as we started. I live in a country where you can be born in insignificant and even trying circumstances. The reason I know that bills come due every 30 days is that my mother sometimes had a hard time paying the bills or making ends meet. I know what it's like when the power gets shut off. I know what it's like to be evicted from apartments and go to different schools, sometimes different schools in one single school year. It's hard. But we live in a country where I grew up in those circumstances, but here I am. I'm the pioneer of my family. I came across, it wasn't a handcart, it was a Suzuki Samurai, came across the plains, was able to get an education, start a small business, get married, raise a family, be a public servant. I served in our state house for 16 years. I served as Speaker of the House for 4 years. And that is not a country where they have equal outcomes of citizens. It's a country where you have equal opportunity. And so the way I've been able to have a life and have a chance, being involved in things that are bigger than myself in terms of public service, I've loved it. I'm a small business owner, but I do love the public service. And so after my time in the House, I purposely didn't think of any other races or things. I didn't want to color my decision-making process. But when this seat came open, and open seats for governor don't happen very often, I thought I had something to contribute to the debate, the dialogue. I'm a conservative, and I think that a conservative perspective is needed in a race like this. And so that's why I got in, to engage in things that are bigger than myself. And really, it's an appreciation for living in such an incredible country and state where there is opportunity, where you can make your way, you can work hard, and see success. And so I want to give back to that, and I've enjoyed it. It's been an honor in my life to be able to be a public servant.
Awesome. So, just speaking of the governor's race, we could have easily had 6 people on this ticket.
Yes.
Had they had the time to get the signatures.
Yeah.
And so we have a caucus system here in Utah. We're one of the few states left with a caucus system.
Yeah.
And what I like about the caucus system is it really is it levels the playing ground for those who have means and those that don't. And it's really under jeopardy right now. First, I thought this is going to make us revisit the caucus system, because we have all these candidates on 1st Congressional District, 4th Congressional District, and for governor.
Yep.
But I'm a little concerned that other people have a different agenda in mind. So we used in our caucus system ranked choice voting. What are your thoughts on ranked choice voting?
Yeah, so I was on a practical level, because we didn't even have caucus meetings this year. The caucus, the delegates, the state delegates that were elected in caucus meetings in 2018 served this time around, because there was a fear in March that we wouldn't have to be able to have those meetings that way. I was grateful that we had delegates, because I think it's a high information election cycle. Delegates get to ask any question under the sun. It is 100% the great equalizer. No, if you don't have it, doesn't matter what your net worth is. Doesn't matter if you're an inside person, or if you're, you have your father ran for governor, or whatever it is. You have to answer questions, and then delegates make a vote of conscience, and I love that system. This ranked choice voting, it was to say, hey, practically speaking, let's just pick your 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th favorite candidates. Well, when you do it that way all at once, the momentum, the rounds, the people that drop off, and their opportunity to let delegates know who they would support potentially, that's how that system has gone. I was willing, at least as a candidate, and under maybe having to be practical, to have ranked choice voting where we were socially distanced. I did not sign up for an election cycle or with delegates where I wasn't allowed to be in the same room with a single delegate. I had to do it all through the phone or through a camera. And I like being around people and being able to discuss it. So it seemed like maybe it was a practical way to do it, but it didn't come in any faster. The convention, the virtual convention didn't end earlier. It took longer. So I wouldn't want to see that as a permanent way to do it. I'd like to get back to the way we've done it before. Our system in the past with our conventions, it hasn't failed us. We've had great public servants. I think it's a great vetting process. I'd like to see that stay intact.
Well, my fear is the people who wanted the count my vote are going to push for ranked choice voting on a primary basis and eliminate the caucus. I mean, that's where as soon as I started getting these emails after the caucus, I thought, oh my goodness, this is where this is going. So for our viewers out there, which we hope to have many soon, the TrumpTater and I are very concerned that money will buy all future elections if we buy into this ranked choice voting on a primary level. You elect 4,000 state delegates as caucus, and anybody can run for it. It's a beautiful opportunity for any Utahn to be involved in their government. 20,000 county delegates. Incredible opportunity, hands-on involvement in electing your leaders. And being able to kind of eliminate some of those candidates that may not be the best. If we go to ranked choice voting in a primary, money will buy all future elections.
So we had a dual path, and you could either gather signatures and go through the convention cycle, or you could just gather signatures, or you could just go through the convention. And I was the only candidate that chose to just go through the convention. It was a refiner's fire. It's about $250,000 to get the signatures. There's no grassroots getting signatures, folks, statewide. You have to pay for those signatures, and it's $250,000 or more to get them. I had raised enough money to get them, but I said, we're going to go through that refiner's fire with delegates, because that's a high information election cycle. And if we can't earn the support to get into the primary with delegates, it doesn't get easier in a primary. And so, it's a nail biter. You're hoping to get out. So I did. And the delegates sent me to the primary. That's where we are now. Of the 4 candidates that are in the race, 3 of them qualified for the ballot with signature gathering. I did not. I'm the only one that said, I'm gonna take that convention cycle, and come what may. I'm gonna either be in or I'm gonna be out, but I'll leave it up to delegates. And I'm telling you, we need to get back to that. I think with so many candidates that were trying to get signatures, you had 2 candidates that were unsuccessful, probably paid that much money or more for their signatures but didn't get them. I think it's shown that the signature gathering is not a grassroots effort. It doesn't have kind of the integrity that people would argue signature gathering would have. You go back to neighborhoods electing delegates. I don't know anything that's a stronger vetting process than that, and it's a good one.
Awesome. Well, we have a couple of quick questions for you. Can you tell the TrumpTater quick? I'm going to put the sign on this side.
Okay.
What sets you apart from other candidates?
What sets me apart, I think I'm battle tested. I'm a conservative. I'm the conservative candidate in this race for governor. Our ticket with myself and Commissioner Victor Iverson from Washington County, we're the conservative ticket. I served as Speaker of the House. We took on tough issues. We had the liberal media attack us. We had the special interest groups attack. We had the Twitter storms and the social media. You got to be able to withstand those things. There's a lot of pressures in politics today, and you can't buckle. Especially on the hard things that are coming, and we're in hard times right now. So what separates me is that I have a track record for those things. I don't buckle, and I think the circumstances, as we talked about earlier, the way I grew up, I think I am, I'm running in a race. My mother was a single mom. We had a tough time, and it's an honor to be able to run, but I think I bring that perspective or that empathy of what life is like for people. I really feel like I'm the candidate for the little guy and gal, and because it's the way I grew up.
Awesome. So Common Core, I feel, and the TrumpTater feels, has been kind of a disaster. What is your vision for education?
Yeah, so we got this because Obama had race to the top federal money and this was one of the requirements that you had to get a curriculum that looked like this. This is the challenge we're going to see because we don't have an economy that's running as it would normally. You don't have tax collection that's happening as it would normally. So you're going to see billions of dollars of shortfall in our state budget in 2021. And there will be these, again, the liberal media, the special interest groups, the social media storms. There's going to be a lot of people pushing for our state to take a lot of federal funds. Well, that's what you got the last time we took federal funds as a state. And I'm going to tell you that we want to resist that gravitational pull. My vision for education is this. We have a lot of children per taxpayer. We got the good news in Utah, we got a lot of kids. Bad news in Utah, we got a lot of kids. And so it's hard to fund our schools with the population growth of students coming in. More students in kindergarten than seniors that graduate by way of student enrollment. So here's the thing. We need to empower these kids and these families with dollars where they can pursue education through traditional public education, through our non-traditional charter school system, or online schools or home schools or private schools. And I think if we look at individualized education for students and we just empower those parents, and there's a cost avoidance. You can give a student $5,000 when traditional public school would be maybe up to $9,000 to pay for them. It leaves more money in our system for our public schools, but we then empower those kids and those parents. You win all the way across. The only reason you see that as a big fight and a controversy is it's turf. It's not about kids. It's about people, adults protecting adult systems and turf battles in politics. It's not about that. So we get away from that. We empower those kids through school choice.
I love it. The curriculum itself to me was disastrous, specifically in mathematics. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But
so Common Core, I lived this. So my family, when parents, if you're lucky enough to have a situation where your kids can have parents help with their homework, the curriculum as it changed was so drastic and it was so unrecognizable to parents. It really separated parents from being able to help their children with their homework. And the communication has just never been strong, and the transition to the Common Core, it started out without even having textbooks. There weren't even textbooks.
There still aren't
for
textbooks.
Yeah, so I'm a recovering legislator now. I finished at the end of 2018, but I'm telling you that has had a lot of unintended consequences with it, and we don't want to repeat those mistakes going forward.
Perfect. So, prison reform is a big passion of the TrumpTater and of mine. I feel like laws passed in the early 1990s were definitely detrimental to minorities, and some of our non-victim crimes, we've put people away for, and I'm not saying there's not victims somewhere in there, but I feel like we've definitely on some drug crimes have put people away for long periods of time. So to me, you mentioned growing up with a single mother, and so I assume a lot of times people look at conservatives and don't recognize the compassionate element in the conservative community. And to me, conservative is the ultimate in compassion. And so anyway, just talk to me about prison reform. What are your thoughts on that?
TrumpTater, you support prison reform. So does our president. President Trump supports prison reform. He's actually signed into law some important reforms in this area. Here's what people might not realize, and this is a conservative principle. almost everyone that enters our jails or our correctional facilities will leave. Most people do not spend the rest of their born days behind bars, so they're going to leave. We have what's called a recidivism rate. If those that are incarcerated are not ready, there's not programming, there's not ways to come out of jail, be self-reliant, or correctional facilities, be self-reliant, become a contributor to society, 65% or more of those that leave come right back in. So you have some crimes that are really boiling down to some severe addictions and some sickness that might not be necessarily a crime, but people need help with health-wise, rehabilitation-wise. But then those that do find themselves in jail or in correctional facilities, we've got to make sure that people are given that chance and are able to have a life again. I really worked hard. We had Salt Lake Community College begin a curriculum program at the Point of the Mountain Prison where we wanted to really help make sure that those that were there are coming out and they have they're prepared with the tools necessary. So I see prison reform two ways. There are some penalties that don't have to have long sentences and terms because of the circumstances surrounding them, but then because they're nonviolent or there's other issues going on. But then those that do find themselves incarcerated, what happens there? It has to be something where people get out and their lives can be changed. And there's nothing conservative about seeing people in a turnstile coming right back in. We need to make sure that people have ability to be self-reliant and be contributors to society.
Awesome. And one of the things I think that's fundamental American belief is that we have the ability to transform, that we're not the same person today as we were yesterday.
That's right. That's right.
And our value that we place on life, the life of the unborn, the life of the elderly, that now again, a lot of people are looking at conservatives who want to open up the economy and saying, you claim you support life, but you're okay losing this life. The elderly people are going to die at a higher rate. There's a big difference between sometimes letting nature run its course than actively taking someone's life.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And I'm not saying I'd advocate at all that I think older people that we in any way would like to see anybody die of coronavirus.
No, we
but
wouldn't.
at the same time, to take back all the liberties that, or take away all the liberties we've given up on that, it's kind of, anyway, I'm getting off track on prison reform, so I'm going to get back on there because these are all so intertwined. But anyway, on prison reform, I see it as very compassionate because we're pro-life. I see it as very conservative because it saves a lot of money in the long run.
It really does. And so that trajectory, look, it is. We love the Cinderella story. We love the comeback story, the comeback kid. We always believe people have a second chance. We don't have a caste system in this society. We don't decide what people's lives are going to look like by the circumstances they were born into or the circumstances they find themselves in. We always believe that people have the ability to lift themselves up and be better than they were. And so how could we not? That's the American way. And
Awesome.
So we should be doing it.
So what Trump did with the First Step Act was a national prison reform. There's a lot of things we need, we won't get into it today, but there's a lot of things we need to do on a state level on prison reform as well. So the TrumpTater has another question. Here in Utah, you were a member of the House legislator for a while.
Yes.
And y'all tend to be very conservative, make sure we can pay our bills. And but now, even before the coronavirus happened, there were a lot of states who were not as thrifty. And they have a lot of financial issues. Just tell our audience quickly what your thoughts are of blue state bailouts.
So blue state bailouts, then it was true before we had this this COVID-19 situation that we're in right now. We had blue states, Democrat states, that were promising. They call them defined benefits for state employees that say, look, you're going to get this kind of health care. We're going to tell you what your benefit is. But they weren't doing the math. They weren't imagining what or actually planning for what those costs would be and setting aside those costs as a state. We as a state shifted to what we call defined contribution, as most businesses and employers in America have already done. And that's because we want to tell the truth as a state. If we're saying that we're going to contribute to a retirement, we are actually putting the dollars away as a state to do that. Blue states, because it's very popular to say you're going to have health care for the rest of your life without an understanding of how a state would pay for it, that is a bailout. What ends up happening is that the state makes promises it can't keep, and then it wants the federal government to bail them out for it. Now you're in COVID-19 time where economic activity is how we all support our households, how businesses stay open, every business needs customers. But if you don't have it, and you don't have that economic activity going on, there's not tax collection happening. And if there isn't tax collection happening, then what? You're going to walk into a fiscal year, you're going to have state budgets that fund our schools, public safety, health and human services, our roads. There's going to be a shortfall, a big shortfall. That's going to happen with counties and cities as well. The answer that Democrats want is the same answer they wanted for all the retirement promises they were making. They will want more federal money. They'll want as much in terms of federal money as the federal government's willing to print. That is, we all pay those taxes, and as we do it right, there's a fundamental fairness that's violated when we have to pay for the irresponsible decisions of blue states. But the other issue is this. We're in this state of Utah, in a red state. When we get into that budget cycle, there's going to be a lot of people that are saying we should take all those federal funds. Well, those federal funds come with strings attached on how you're going to spend it, but also they tell you how you're going to spend your state dollars as well. The dollars that they didn't collect, that are state dollars, they tell you how to spend those. That's the Common Core type of consequence. So we're going to have to stave off federal funds ourselves because people want their budgets held harmless, and that's going to be hard. It's going to be tough times coming into this 2021 year. But then how do you bail out a blue state who's decided? New York is the biggest example right now. They've shut down their whole state's economic activity as an entire state. And I don't know what they think their end game. I do know what their end game is. They just think the federal government should print all the money they need. Well, our grandkids and great grandkids couldn't pay the debt that they would put upon future generations by demanding that money now. So we got to stave it off, and we got to talk about it because we don't want the politics to be that those blue states get that bailout, and we're out here working hard trying to make our way, doing it the right way, and we end up paying the bill.
Well, one thing that happened even before coronavirus, there is definitely a higher rise in people who are supporting socialism in America than has ever supported socialism before. And to me, this has just opened the floodgates because we have now instilled fear into our citizens.
That's right.
The fear of not just this pandemic, but fear of economic survival, fear of, for their families. I mean, it's just throughout our entire country, fear is just, I'm trying to think of the right way I want to explain it, but I think you know what I mean. It's penetrating everyone.
So look, if you describe the scenario and the situations we're in right now in the state of Utah at the beginning of March, and you said, Greg, the state of Utah will force businesses to close and will not allow them to open up. And if they do, it's a slow trickle. They're going to give you a little bit here and there, and they're going to pick which businesses actually get to do that, which businesses do not. If you told me that in Utah, that the state of Utah would say, okay, churches, your doors are closed until we tell you you're allowed to open them. And then when you open them, here's the stipulations. And they're using these words, non-negotiable stipulations from the state of Utah to faith leaders. Now, I belong to a faith, the predominant faith of the state, that already decided to cancel church meetings, so it went right over my head that the state was even doing this. But we have churches in this state that wanted to open. The reason there isn't, I think, the pushback is there's a lot of fear. Fear has allowed, and we've seen this in history. Human history shows that fear is where people lose their liberties, where they lose their rights, where terrible things can happen. There's so much fear related to this virus that your freedom of religion, having your government pick which businesses are essential or not, which all businesses, if they support a family, are pretty essential to that family. All of the issues of right of assembly, having the state of Utah in a very open-ended way. Our state of emergencies were for wildfires and earthquakes and floods and defined moments in time where time was against us, where we had to act quickly. We're in this open-ended pandemic that the statutes related to state of emergencies were never intended to do the things that they're doing. So we have to dial that back. We have to dial it back hard, and we have to say, look, fear is contagious, but so is courage. And now we have to start talking about these things, about how we're going to make sure we don't lose our constitutionally protected liberties. They're important. There's no state of emergency that trumps the Bill of Rights. It doesn't work that way. So we just have to, as a people, talk about it more. It's an uncomfortable topic because people want to place this false choice. Do you want people to live or do you want to have an economy? There is no public safety plan that doesn't have a get back to work plan, absolutely a hand in glove part of it. You won't have it. There's nothing healthy about poverty. There's nothing healthy about famine. There's nothing healthy about telling people they can't have hospitals open for preventative care, mammograms, things like this. chemotherapy treatments, radiation treatments. These are the things that are not happening in our hospitals today that happen every day, that save lives every day. We're not seeing that happen. So it is a false choice, and it's actually a lie to tell you that if you care about people, we're going to keep this economy closed, and we're going to lose our liberties, and we're all going to be okay, and we're all going to be safe in the end. It's a false narrative. And I think that there's some unwitting participants where they don't know what we're doing. But I'm going to tell you, there's some in Washington, D.C., and we've seen in those presidential Democrat debates, collectivism is all the rage. They would love for these businesses to wilt away. They would love for every American to need the federal government to send them a check so that they can survive the next month. We have got to resist this. It's pretty serious.
It is. I mean, it concerns me when right now there's people, fist bump.
There we go.
Okay. That are actually suggesting we should pay every American $2,000 a person. So if you have a family of 6, all of a sudden you're making $12,000 in your income, which we weren't making that before. And it's tempting, I have to admit.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking of my small business. I'd be better off taking that $2,000 than I am trying to keep my business alive. So with this fear, there's a temptation to give up our further freedoms. And
That's right.
And so somehow we've got to just really remind people on that.
Again, let's just open up our history books. Sometimes people misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that we need to be unhealthy or unsafe or not take precautions. What I'm saying is we have liberty in this country. We have certain rights that our Constitution protects. And it's in that framework we make decisions. And if you're telling me that it could be unsafe for people to get together, it doesn't mean you get to take someone's right of worship away from them because of it. It means within the Bill of Rights and within our constitutionally protected liberties, we have to allow people those decision making, even when things get tough, even when things get scary. And I have every confidence in the world that there isn't a single restaurant owner who doesn't want the employees to be healthy, that doesn't want the customers to be healthy and not get sick. There's not a faith leader that doesn't want their congregation to be healthy, to be able to be spiritually enriched and go into their churches and their places of worship and be healthy doing it. So I think those same decisions can be made, but not by government. We didn't sign up for government to dictate all those terms and how they say it should be done. So I'm saying that's the system we all signed up for. That's what we have in this country that I thought up until just recently we were pretty resolute was worth keeping. We have to get back to that. And so I just think that it's the way we frame it. I think we all want to be safe. We are in a new era with a virus that we don't have an immunity towards, but I don't think that there's a cure coming anytime soon. And so we just have to operate into that new norm. And it doesn't affect everyone the same. Some older people or medically frail people can continue to be quarantined. Young people and people that are what they call medically resolved because they've had it and they've come through the other side. We got to get back to work. It's not an option. It's a necessity.
Well, our time has gone by quick.
It's gone so fast.
It has.
TrumpTater, you've had a lot to say. I'm telling you right now. I can just feel it. I can just feel all the strength of will and the good ideas coming from you.
So one thing the TrumpTater has wanted Americans to know, and Utahns to know, is that we are stronger than we realize we are, and we're more resilient. So I think we just have to dig deep and realize that we can make it through this, and we don't have to make it through this giving up our civil liberties.
I won't say it better than this, TrumpTater, but I will just tell you, tough times don't last, but tough people do. It is the heritage and the history of the state of Utah, a pioneering state. Through the toughest of times, tough people made it through those times and grew this state in the way that we have it today. Over 3 million people live here in the state of Utah. Such a strong economy. It's still a city on the hill, a pioneering state where people continue to come to the state of Utah. It grows from within, one of the highest birth rates in the nation, big families. We see that what it means to be tough people and to take on those tough times. And that's Utah's story, but that's America's story. And I think that, again, we are a nation of immigrants, and it was under those same circumstances that people came to this country. We can't forget that. That means that this virus, we will be resilient. We will, my prediction is Utah will emerge from this crisis first, early, and more prosperous than other states because of the grit that we have as Utahns.
Awesome. And the fact that we were better prepared going into it as well.
We are better prepared.
But we are, as we open up the economy, we are going to lose more people. So it's a matter of losing more people up front to this virus or over a period of time. So
I know we're coming to an end, but I just want to tell people they changed the rules on us on this.
Yeah, they did.
They never said, when they told us to go in, when the state of Utah said, everybody go in your homes for 2 weeks, and it was 2 weeks they said it, it was never said that we were going to shrink the number of cases. What they said is if you had, say, 40,000 cases, you can't have them all in 2 weeks. That's when you overwhelm your healthcare system. So it was never told to us that we were going to reduce cases. What we were going to do is flatten the curve, meaning we would have those same number of cases, because we have no ability to stave it off, over 6 weeks, 8 weeks. We were going to have the same number, but we were going to spread it over time. So will we have more than when we're not outside? We will, but I don't believe we'll have more cases than we would have originally. The original goal was that we couldn't have all the cases happening at the same time. Then they moved the goalpost on us and they said, no, we just want less cases and less cases and less cases. You can't do that when there's not a vaccine, when there's not treatments to this virus. Having less cases is not it's not even a possibility. So we will see when people are around each other more, it happened. But we were always told that we were just trying to stretch out the amount of time that those cases where people would be getting it, not that we could shrink it wholly without a vaccine or without treatments.
Absolutely. So anyway, the TrumpTater has a motto that we say at the end of every one of our TrumpTater podcasts. So it is to be a tater and not a hater. So a tater, also, as I looked up in the dictionary, is what Trump meant. And again, Trump means to outclass, outshine, outperform someone or something. A tater is a home run. It's
nice.
Yeah, isn't that nice? So a tater is somebody who does. And as we as conservatives or Trump supporters, I think we're doers.
Yeah.
And so his motto is to be a tater and not a hater. So we'll hold up the sign and we'll say it together.
All right.
All right.
You want me to hold the sign up?
Yeah, you can hold the sign up.
Okay.
And actually, at the count of three, 1, 2, 3. Be a tater, not a hater.